Hello and welcome to GMI, the Guitar Music Institute, podcast episode number 58. My name is Ged Brockie, and this episode and the next episode you're going to hear have me sounding rather croaky because sadly I'm getting over a bad cold. Or not sadly, it's good that I'm getting over a bad cold, but it has affected my voice, so apologies for that. Today I'm interviewing someone I first interviewed back in July 2020. It was episode number 41 and it was about musicians managing to live and work through lockdown. I'm happy to say that musician, his name is Honza Kourimsky, is back talking with me today. And he's talking about his plans for the future in terms of moving to America. He's talking about his new band, and he's talking about all the new music that's been released and a new tour. It's a wide-ranging interview, which I think many people will find of interest, primarily because sometimes the idea of running a band seems quite a simple thing. You get together with some friends, you do some rehearsals, and they go out and get some gigs. Well, hopefully this 1 hour interview will help you understand that it is actually a lot more complex than that. And the last thing that seems to be on the menu is the music. There's the whole organisation of it, but I don't want to spoil it for you. The music you can hear right now is part of the music that Honza's given and allowed me to play from the new album release. I would really urge you in almost all of these episodes that if you enjoy what you hear and you want extra content, then come over to the guitarandmusicinstitute.com website, listen to the podcast, or look at the podcast pages and look up whatever actual podcast episode you're listening to. Because on that page, like this one, like all of them, there's videos of Honza playing, there's links to where you can find out more about him online, and there's loads of great images as well as art. Here is my interview with Honza Kourimsky. Well, Honza, it's great to have you here again, right in front of me. Please put up with my croaky voice like the last interviewer, but it's been reasonably close since the last one I did. It's great to see you. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm glad we're doing this one in person. Last time we did it, it was online, so it's great seeing you after all these years as well.
Yeah,
looking forward to touching base.
It was July 2020, episode 41, guys and gals out there. I was talking to Honza about living in lockdown as a musician. Do you remember those times? It feels like a bad dream, but it really did happen. But today, Honza, you're here to tell me about some really exciting stuff that's happening around you and because of you. And that is a band, a recording, and a tour. So before you go into all that, which is amazing, perhaps you'd like to tell our dear listeners, many of whom are in the United States, a wee bit about you.
Okay, I'll try and make it concise. So, yeah, my name is Honza Kourimsky. I am from Czech Republic, and I moved to the UK in 2015 to study music, and actually happened to have Jed as my guitar teacher at the time, and that was sort of my start into composing, arranging, but also into playing specifically sort of jazz guitar at the time. And yeah, then I finished my course here. I studied onwards to do a bit of master's to learn composition in more detail. And then I stayed on. I had the chance to tour with a band called Nimbus Sextet at the time that presented cool new opportunities touring around the UK, and get to meet really exciting musicians that, you know, are directly linked to what we're going to talk about today with my band and stuff. And that was the sort of foundation of my musical journey, those 2 years of touring a lot and playing at cool places. And
is Nimbus the Nimbus group the one that I saw in the south of Scotland? At a small festival. It was
in the south of Scotland.
Yeah,
when we bumped into each other. Yes, that was that band indeed. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
that was like a little jazz festival they were throwing.
Yeah, what happened, people, was I got called up to do a stand-in for a guitar player friend with some London singer, and it just so happened that Honza and his band was there. And what I found very interesting about it is how, full disclosure, Honza, when he was a student, I recognise talent when I see it, and always thought he was going to be someone to keep an eye on. And he actually has created a book on how to tap, or tapping for guitar, called Tapping Discovered. But that tapping and all of that, there was elements of that in the band, wasn't there?
Yeah, and it was a great musical challenge, because obviously did jazz guitar with Ged, but a huge part of my background is playing blues and mainly rock music, to be honest. And so then I got asked into this band, which was great, but I had to find a way to marry the things that they wanted with the things that I like to play. Because obviously at some level, if you get called in as a session guitarist, you don't just take complete creative liberties with what's going on. You have to match the creative vision of the band leader, whose name is Joe Nichols. He's an amazing keyboard player. So I think hopefully when you saw me at that gig, I was definitely thinking about those things and marrying up where I sort of come from musically with what you had taught me and with what Joe wanted.
Well, aside from what I taught you, I thought it was very impressive indeed, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it might be good for people just to know a little bit more about your background, Honza, because it is really quite interesting. You're very much the international man about town,
right.
Aren't you?
Yeah, and actually I'm so glad you asked about that, because it's definitely relevant to the music as well. So, like I said, I'm from Czech Republic, where I was born, but we only had lived there for 8 years of my life before we moved away. My parents grew up behind the Iron Curtain and never had the opportunity to travel. So when finally the curtain fell and they had the opportunity through their work to explore new places, they sort of didn't hesitate and took their entire family along. So then we moved to Serbia, where we lived for 4 years.
How was that?
How was that? It was amazing.
I was very interested to see that you'd been in Serbia, because there is some, rightly or wrongly, some negative connotations around Serbia.
Yeah, well, I think it's all about which lens you're looking through,
Right.
And partially what I love about traveling, and Serbia is a great example, is that it's easy to look on something, like it's hard to recognize that you're being told to look at it through a specific lens until you're there and you get in touch with the local people, and no country's perfect, but you start to understand their history and why they have certain feelings about certain events. And
is this before the war?
It's after their war,
After
the Yugoslavian war,
Right.
Pretty freshly after, because that one, if I'm correct, ended in 1999, and we moved there when I was 8, so that must have been 2004.
So did you see the effects of war?
Yeah, definitely. And in Belgrade, specifically, they also, just partially due to poorer resources, they didn't have the ability to actually take away loads of the destruction. So in the very center of town, you still had all the bombed out buildings. And whilst we were there were also, from time to time, riots. And all the embassies happened to be on the same street in Belgrade. And every time there was riots, they would just get all damaged and trashed and run over by people. So we saw the effects on a structural level, but also on a sociological level.
Why did your parents want to go to Serbia? Was there
I don't think that I think they just took the opportunity that was given. They saw a chance to move out, to see a new place, to expose their children to something, to a wider lens of cultures, and they took it. And I think, in some ways it was a great fit, because we are all Slavic people, so it was great going from a sort of northern or more northern Slavic nation to a southern one, and again observe the similarities and differences. And
you should just say that parents, are they both doctors? Or
no, so my mom is a doctor, and my dad was a chemist. And so that's and there, it was actually my dad's job that took us over there. And yeah, I did want to say when initially asked, living in Serbia was amazing culturally, but also musically, because I didn't do any music until later in my life, which was also hard playing catch up with everyone else. But music seeps into you anyway, and loads of the music that we're going to talk about is actually so strongly Serbian influence, but I was never trying to actively listen. I didn't even know what active listening was at the time. But because I was there at such an impressionable age, and I think that the country is so culturally rich, it just got in anyway.
I do believe that. I mean, I remember being in the Scottish Highlands on a tour once, and my friend Nigel Clark, we were standing looking out to the Highlands because we were on an island looking at the Highlands. Mm-hmm. And the sun was going down. It was an amazing scene. And he just says, "Jed, let it burn into your soul." And I really do believe that it does affect how you feel about yourself. And if I can say it, the earth and the universe in a funny, weird kind of sort of way. So, when you were in Serbia, did you find a lot of animosity towards the West?
Yes. Specifically the United States of America. And I think that was partially because, again, it's crazy. I was 8 when we moved, so I don't think you would hear rhetoric, but I'm an 8-year-old. I wasn't trying to analyze what they were talking about. And sometimes now when I talk to friends about it and they ask similar questions, I sort of think about it retrospectively and think, yeah, actually that happened and this was said, and wow, those feelings were much stronger than I realized. And also, I was obviously friends with loads of other 8-year-olds, and just to watch children adopt this rhetoric from the adults, what I'm trying to say is just it's crazy how impressionable kids can be, and then they regurgitate that information without really thinking, because they can't what they're saying, what they're representing.
We're all fighting the wars of 1,000 years ago, right?
But what is amazing is that I think it's important to see it from both sides. There is certain animosity that is unjustified, but a certain ignorance from the West of a few things that are justified. Just like in anything. I mean, I think these conflicts, they always hurt the wrong people, or they just hurt everyone, and no one really is a winner.
And of course, Serbia feels that they are the bulwark of Christianity against the Muslim hordes in history, don't they?
I don't know about that. But
well, they do. They had a big battle and they won. So anyway, where was next on the itinerary?
So then we moved to Germany, which is obviously a huge contrast. And I was
whereabouts?
In Berlin, and I think I was there from the age of 14 until 18. So I did my entire high school there. And
so can you speak fluent German?
I can speak German, yeah. I'm not perfect in it, but
come on, Honza, impress us. How many languages do you have a grasp of? Are you the Novak Djokovic of guitar?
I have a good grasp of 4 languages: English, Czech, German, and Serbian.
Fantastic.
But the Serbian's going a little down the drain because
you just don't
I don't use it. Recently, I have made a Croatian friend, and we can speak Serbo-Croatian to each other, which has been great. But yeah, Berlin was amazing because I was there in my teenage years, and I don't know if who's listening, if people have been to Berlin or heard about what it's like. Obviously, it's a huge electronic music scene, drum and bass, techno. I think the techno is probably the strongest part.
Popcorn.
And and the clubbing scene there is very relaxed, perfect for a teenager. And yeah, I got this huge love for electronic music, which mixing it with sort of Balkan folk music is quite the contrast. But again, like we were saying before, some of this music gets into you not because you're trying to think about the music, but you're internalizing it because of the personal memories you have, within you. I like loads of the Berlin techno scene, not because I sat there and being like, oh, I really like the arrangement of this tune, but because I have it associated with going out and having fun with my friends, and that's such a powerful feeling that it has now become the foundation of my music, and I'm sure people have that with different influences, you know.
Yes, I always feel that to have a style, no one's style surely is unique in most cases, but it's an amalgamation of everything you've listened to plus your own take on things.
Yeah, I guess I would add to that, saying that I think you take all these things and then they mix in your head in a unique way, and that is the new sound, you know. And yeah, all these wonderful mixtures is just an opportunity to create a new sort of meta sound, and I think especially today with the way the world is connected, no one just makes like one pure art form, if that was even a thing ever. But
good question. Yeah, good point.
But and it's wonderful, you know, because I think we really need synergy and connection and acceptance. And so if people are all making music and they're finding it hard to define and hard to pigeonhole, good. I'm all for that. I think that just shows that people are willing to be connected to other cultures.
My name is Ged Brockie. I'm in conversation with Honza Kourimsky, and we're in the same room and the windows are open because, believe it or not, dear listener, it is actually quite warm in Scotland. Well, it's warm for me here in Edinburgh. And so if you hear the occasional child or bird in the background, that's them outside. Honza, tell us a little about what you learned from your first band, or that large band that I saw in the south of Scotland, which toured all over the place, didn't it?
With Nimbus Sextet. That was my sort of... So I had done my own bands before, and we did tiny little tours that I organized, as is the case, I think, for loads of musicians nowadays, just having to do it all. And this was sort of my first ever time when somebody had asked me to be part of something, as opposed to me just sort of taking the head on it. And so it was an opportunity to learn from a new angle, you know. So obviously a huge music learning curve, because I was chucked into, I would say, working with some of the sort of most exciting musicians that exist in the new Scottish jazz scene. And through them, I connected to the sort of extent of that scene, which has been incredible, you know, because... I guess this is also linked to the second thing I wanted to say, but just on a musical level, it was very inspiring. But the second thing I was leading up to is that I think it had an even bigger impact on becoming aware of the industry element of working in music. And I had a lot of opportunities to learn from the band leader, because we would talk about, you know, if we're releasing music, what does that need to accompany? You know, who is releasing it? Who's on it? Where is it being pitched? How is it being pitched? Why these people? Everything had to have a higher reason than just we're making music for it because it's fun. And it's up to you to decide whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's the great lesson was that becoming aware that you can get so seeped into that world that you lose track of the main reason of why you're doing it. But also understanding that if you're going to put all that effort, you have to try and maximize your opportunity. So I just, through that, also became more aware of who booking agents are and managers, and who owns certain record labels, and how do you get on certain radios, and how can you sort of web this all together to create a product that can sustain you for a longer period of time. And that's what I was trying to say earlier, is that's why it was also great getting in touch with those Scottish musicians from the new jazz scene, because I also just, on an industry level, became a lot more connected, and I could pull more people in and make it a higher, I'm trying to find the right word, sort of like an industry product, you know.
So hold that thought, Honza, wherever you're at in the overall point, but I just want to talk about the actual business. You talk about the business of music, but is there any business left in music? For example, recorded music now gets pennies for thousands and thousands of plays. it's since COVID, it's very difficult to get bookings that actually, promoters are not wanting to take the chance. What is the reality nowadays, without talking too much yet about your new project, even in the time that you've had in the scene?
Yeah, I mean, great, very poignant question, I would say. And I'm certainly no expert. My experience is limited both in time and the amount of different roles I have done. But just in my sort of opinion, I think you work with the hand you're given. I would say yes, promoters are definitely willing to take less risks. And yes, there is very little money to be made in recorded music, but I do choose to look at the silver linings, and I think that one can choose to look at it positively and look where things are sort of growing and blossoming. I think the engagement with live music has gone up humongously because we feel quite oversaturated by information that's coming at us from the virtual world, are longing for a tangible physical experience. So they are more willing, I think, to come to events. Of course, it's hard to get people to focus on your event because there's so many places they can go to. But I do think that engagement is there. Also, there is a rise in people's engagement with vinyl, which is a new revenue stream that's kind of died and come back again, which I think is incredible.
Does that have a lot of startup costs?
Huge startup costs. It's funny, actually, Jed, that you say that, because literally before we did this recording, I went to go meet just a guy who lives here in Edinburgh and runs this thing called The Last Days of Pompeii. And he produces lathe cut vinyls that used to be made. That's a technology that comes from the 50s and has now died, and he's sort of bringing it back, producing sort of really simple records in small orders, 30, at a time. And he's doing it entirely because of to tackle the startup costs that emerging artists are
That's
trying
very
to.
interesting.
It's very cool, and if forget the product itself, which is incredible. I love that he has thought about this and wants to do something about it. So I think engagement with merchandise is there, and I do still choose to believe or have faith in the fact that your music can reach a lot of people within our world.
I suppose what I'm really driving at here is there actually a living to be made for someone or people within our group who aren't in the sort of, that sort of pop rock world, whatever that is, right at the very top? Can diverse creative artists actually create meaningful amounts that means they can survive on their art form?
Yeah, I mean, I would say not everyone, but in our cohort on the bachelor level, which you're aware of, there is 30 of us that I started, I think, and I can think of 6 of us that are doing it, who are actively touring, getting paid. Of course, they don't live in mansions, far from it, but they get to tour the world, play in front of crowds, be musical, and sustain themselves.
It's really weird that you should say that, because when I went to music college in the mists of time, that's exactly kind of the figures that it was for my year. Maybe it's always been that. Who knows? And
I should add that the people I'm talking about, diverse genres, There's somebody, the people that I'm thinking about, one does sort of pop music, the other one is a heavy sort of punk rock musician, then jazz, of course, and a few people doing singer-songwriter stuff. So it is spread out,
Was Ross Campbell in your year?
No, he was 2 years above.
Bulletproof Guitar. He's now in America.
Mm-hmm. He is, yeah.
Anyway, we diverge. I just want to now go back to the band.
Mm-hmm.
Were you getting to write music in the style of the... I mean, did music come? Did you get the chance to write? And if you did get a chance to write, was it in any way influenced from your life in Germany, your life in Serbia, your life in...
Yeah, it was definitely influenced.
That must have been great to have the platform to write for that, yeah?
What do you mean? Sorry.
For your band.
Yeah, but I think I get what you mean. I think the order of it was actually reversed. I have spent, like I said, I was in bands before, and I think I spent the first 4 years of my songwriting process writing music that I think that I wanted other people to like. Okay. That I thought, okay, if I can try and sound like this band, that's going to be it. And it just felt, and I think loads of people
is that to gain success?
Yeah,
and acceptance.
And I think I saw that is the path to sort of being musically satisfied. And of course, it didn't work because you are your own person, and if you go against that, you literally, like, there's only one way that can go. So after a while, I think I sort of had enough understanding and knowledge to recognize that. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to empower myself to write music that just sounds like me. And I'm not going to think about whether it's this genre or this genre, whether it aligns with the current vibe in the scene that surrounds me, whether it's academic enough to pass, be competitive with other jazz tunes. I'm not going to care if it sounds like jazz or not.
Takes a lot of courage to do that, doesn't
it? I think so, and I think it's something that everyone struggles with, and at least I have heard so many sort of established artists talk about how that was their journey, and so many emerging artists talking about how they're struggling with that. It was definitely the case for my situation, but the amount of freeness and expression that comes when you just allow yourself to be you is unbelievable. It's so inspiring.
And has that, what you just described there, has that found its completeness in your new band Mahuki?
I am trying. I'm hoping so. At least to me, it feels like it is. And it's funny, I was showing my dad the album like a month ago, and he's like, oh, it doesn't really sound like jazz. And I was like, yeah, I don't really care,
So Mahuki how long has Mahuki been going? And it's your idea? Is it your baby?
Yeah, it's my project. So like I said, after I went through this empowering period of just saying, I'm going to write my own music, I thought, okay, I need a platform to do that. So I created this band. And so I would say it's a fairly new project. We did our first performance in the August 2022 at the Fringe, but it didn't really get any sort of shape or form until December that year, where we recorded a live album. That was really cool. It was like a little sold out event, and we had people stationed around the band, and the band was within the room.
Is that a bit like
a Julian Lage? Yeah, Julian Lage, or like Snarky Puppy, similar sort of vibe. And I had a whole camera team and a recording team, and that was cool. I've never done a live album before. It was pretty scary.
Happy?
And yeah, I was happy. I don't think I loved my own performance, but it was just cool to see it all come together, and I was so glad that the turnout was good, because I wanted it to be a moment for the scene, not just for the band.
And did that sort of gird your loins for more and the band? What was the morale effect of that part?
Yeah, I think again, just, I was talking about Nimbus before, it's becoming more industry savvy. We recorded this album, I think everyone had a good time, but I now understand that there needs to be, like I said, a higher purpose to everything. So I said, okay, we're going to record this album, and then there's a tour. And so I planned a tour, and I think that boosted morale, that they felt that there was something coming up. And then, it gets exhausting, because basically any move you make, you have to follow up with the next move, So, for example, we're recording this album, we're releasing this album right now, and I'm already in conversation with certain people about 2025.
Yeah, that might be good for listeners to understand just how it all works. Here we are. We're in July 2024. Give them an idea about the recording, touring, writing cycle.
Yeah, the cycle. This year, my biggest lesson was understanding the importance of funding. because there's very little money to be made in music, but you have understanding of the environment that surrounds you, you realize that there are powers out there that can help you create art. There are people who are still willing to champion music, as long as you know how to look for them and how to entice them. And that's not, when I say entice, I don't mean any sort of sleazy marketing way. I just say you have to show them that you've given this real thought, not just, I felt like writing some tunes, so here we go. People will want to support something where you can say, okay, I have music, I have these musicians, they're willing to record it, and then we're going to do this tour. So I would say the cycle is first forming, at least in my opinion, is forming an idea of what is the purpose here. And I'm not saying you have to have a 25-year plan, but just something of where you want to go. And so once you have that, and if you receive the funds, then I obviously, and assuming that the music's already written, you go into the recording, then the producing, and then the release.
Honza, did you ever work with arts and business?
No, this is just entirely self-thought.
Okay. No, I mean arts and business is, if it's in other countries, certainly in Scotland and the UK.
As an organisation?
Yeah, that looks to link businesses with artists, whether they're musicians or painters, and it's I've used them and I've been lucky in that I've been given, like, on one occasion I was given £20,000.
Really?
Which is about, I don't know, $30,000 to put on a pseudo orchestral thing with that. So for anyone out there who is doing this sort of thing, check out arts and business. There might be something in your country.
Yeah.
And something for you to look at going forward.
See, this is a great example. You just taught me about a new player in the scene that I didn't know about, Yeah. And I would say that what I would encourage everyone to do is just have some sort of mental map where they track these sort of things.
Sorry, I interrupted you because
no,
you were
not
there.
At all. It was a really good point.
But you were talking about you then go into the recording.
Yeah. You record the process and then go into the production. I would say my experience this year has been you have to give yourself more time. These processes, you record it, then different ideas come into your head, and then you realize something needs to be re-recorded, and so give yourself time for that. Think about who you want the producer to be. The producer can be another asset, both musically, but also on a marketing level. You don't have to self-produce it all, and so when you're writing the funding application or sourcing funding, talk about that. Talk about what are all the musical players that are involved in this. And then a huge lesson again for me this year is then it comes to the releasing of the music, and so many people just let it out there into the void with no thought. Look at PR companies, look at marketing companies. Not everyone out there is evil. There are companies who are willing to help promote your music. Think about where you're promoting it. Don't if you live in the States, don't chuck a whole bunch of money to promote your music in I don't know, somewhere very far away like Madagascar or something. I mean, it would be great to play there, I'm sure, but it needs to be relevant to you.
What do you think of these internet radio companies that will get your music played right across internet radio? Have you ever dealt with them?
Yeah, actually, it's funny that you say that. One got in touch with me yesterday. A PR company that is more focused on the Spotify sort of element of things, but I think exposure is great, and worldwide exposure great, but it should be linked to you. I think, and again that goes. So the next stage we're going to talk about touring. Again, who's the booking agent involved in this? Is there a manager involved? Who's helping you? And where is this tour doing? Where is it going? So maybe your PR campaign is in sync with your tour. So say you do want to invest a whole bunch of money into promoting somewhere where you're not at. Okay, great. So are you going to build the tour around that? So that they're all kind of interweaved. And I think what's really difficult is that you should have some idea, maybe not all, but some idea about all the questions when you're right at the start writing the funding application.
I would bet there's lots of people listening to this interview right now who have no idea just how complex the whole process was from original. It's just like a musician wants to write a tune and then get it out there. But there's a lot, so much more to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
Especially if you weren't trying to cut through in any meaningful way.
But that's not to say, I did a mini tour in November 2023 with my partner. We started a little duo, wrote a bunch of tunes, and you can also, not everything needs to be this like wildly thought out, and I do think that like it does tend to suck the life out of music, like the joy out of music making sometimes when you feel so overwhelmed by the magnitude of this task. So I'm just talking about at the moment about ways to cut through and think on the music industry level, but if you just want to release some songs and play to your friends, do that, but make sure that you manage your expectations, do that, and let the reasons for why you're doing it be those, and don't just do one thing and hope for the other thing, because you're just going to end up disappointed.
Now, on managing expectations, I come to the size of the band.
Yeah.
It's so can you maybe tell the listeners how many people, what you've got in terms of an ensemble playing on the recording, and then what you're going to be taking on the road on the tour?
Yeah, I definitely.
What's the album name, by the way?
So the album is called Gratitude, and with Gratitude, I wanted to be musically bold, which again I would say dates to the very first few lessons that I had with you and all the little composition classes that we had. And so the core of the band is always drums, bass, guitar, a tenor, and alto saxophones, and then a trumpet. That's how we've toured it in the past. But I had never really made a studio album before. And I thought, okay, how can I sort of maximize it? So I added a bass trombone player and a percussion player. And I thought that was going to be it. And this is kind of what I was meaning with the producer element. Then we got into the producing process, and I wanted to make more of it. I didn't want it to just sound like a sonic documentation of what we do. I wanted to produce this album. So we added strings, cello, viola, and a violin. And then we ended up adding a lot of vocal layers as well.
Did you double up those instruments, or did you just have them as soli? Did you double up on your violins?
No. I wanted it to be just a trio, so they did that together, and we recorded it in one session all together. I think if I were to do it again, I would have probably written a fourth part and had the violin player do violin 1, violin 2. Learning curve for me. I mean, that whole thing was a huge learning curve, which, again, I would encourage everyone for take the risk, because you're going to discover so many things about how things work. And I wrote string parts. Not all of it worked. Sometimes, I also learned that was my first time working with strings, so...
So you were writing not only the compositions, you were doing all the arrangements as well?
Yeah. I do it all. The only thing that I don't do is that I sort of half the producing process with a sound engineer friend of mine, or a producer friend of mine.
How long did the actual recording session take for Gratitude?
For Gratitude, we split it into different sessions. So we met up in September for 2 full days where we did the sort of core members of the band. Then I think we did another date in October. And then we separately in November did the strings. And then in December, we did a 4-date tour. And the penultimate date of the tour was another day of recording for the band.
Wow.
But then I separately did 3 full days of just doing guitar layers because I wanted to be guitar led. So I did that all extra too. So I think all in all, maybe pure time was probably 8 days of recording.
You think about some of the rock albums out there that take 1.5 years, 2 years.
But I think that the tough part of the recording is that some of these tunes, I want it to be episodic. The whole album, I hope you guys check it out, by the way. I've written it as a film score, so it starts with a fanfare and then it goes into the first tune, and musically I've thought it all out. So the fanfare starts in F major, modulates to F minor, the first tune is F minor, and then the next tune seamlessly goes from F minor, modulates to G minor, and then all the songs are intertwined.
So it's all segued all the way.
All the way. There's pretty much no stop, and that's why the tunes that's why we needed full days, because we did them in sections, but the tunes are 11 minutes long sometimes, you know.
Just as an aside, people listening to your accent will probably think you're an American, but as you pointed out, you're not. And that's because you were taught at an international school, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
But you are going to be, you've been living in America, you're in Scotland for a little while longer, and is it right you're going back?
Yeah, I'm going to try and move at the end of this year. It's all sort of pending my visa process.
So how does that work? Is that a hard thing, or is it quite easy to...
No, I would say it's pretty hard. Also not entirely open financially. It's quite expensive to do that.
Will you have to become an American citizen to
I would know I will have to become a permanent resident,
right.
Which is another way of saying having a green card.
Got you. Okay. And what will happen to the band once you're over there? Do you think you'll take the charts and just restart the band with new players over in California?
So I've thought about this, and for a year now, I've remodeled the marketing model to be entirely focused on me. So really the band, even with the press releases we're putting out at the moment with the singles that have been coming out, they just focus on myself as the band. So the idea is to go over there, and I'm in touch with a US-based manager at the moment, try to persuade him to maybe take me on, and I'll take it from there. But you know,
what's been the take-up for the guys? I mean, I'm sure they're fine, but I mean, how do they feel about that? Because they're basically just playing, dare I say, second fiddle.
Yeah, but I think that's a very fair question. But these lines I set a little while ago. There are, you know, I fund the whole thing, organize the whole thing, write all the music, produce all the music, do all the marketing myself. So I of course ask them to help, but the expectation's not there. And in return, I have given myself room for it to be just focused around me.
So it's fundamentally your band anyway.
Yeah,
you do know.
To some extent, they are somewhere in between sort of session guys and members of the band, if that makes sense. And I do have to say, this has been another learning curve for me, is that loads of people have absolutely no problem with that, you know, and some people are willing to emotionally invest themselves into projects, but a lot of people that I work with, they kind of don't mind either way, which is weird when you see that they are so exceptional on their instruments. I think there's a sort of maybe wrongful assumption, but a definitely assumption that I drew, that like if you've put this much work into music, you're somehow going to be very emotionally invested into every time you're making it. A lot of these guys, they come in, they absolutely nail the sessions, make some incredible music, and they walk away, and it's not really touched them emotionally, you know.
Yeah, it's a bit like the the London West End or wherever, where the guys are reading the book, put the book down, pick up their instrument, play whatever they're playing in the show, put the instrument down and pick up the book again.
Yeah.
Because they've been doing it for 15 years and there's golden handcuffs.
Yeah, and it's I think in some ways, you know,
is that because you want them to be emotionally invested because it's your music?
Well, I just think that, like, I am of course emotionally invested, but even when I was touring with Nimbus, I was emotionally invested just kind of naturally. I just feel like it's music, it's hard not to be, you know, but loads of people don't have it that like that, and
so would it be fair to say that you're disappointed?
No, I was actually literally just about to say that it has been an amazing learning curve, you know, because I've had to work really hard at staying calm, you know, on stage when I'm making music. And I don't mean staying calm in terms of like throwing some sort of tantrum, but just not let overexcitement destroy my ability to focus on music. You know, I'm a guitarist, so I get really excited, and then when I'm alternative picking, the the steady movement of up and down is just not there because I'm so excited. My left hand clenches up, is pressing so hard on the fretboard, and then I'm trying to strum through the instrument, and it's all sort of just gone haywire. And these guys who are able to just separate themselves emotionally from the music that they're making, they're just calm and they execute things perfectly. And I'm not saying, like, of course, I'm not an extreme of one and they're not an extreme of other, but it's really great watching it and learning from that, because maybe it's not good to just care that much. Maybe you shouldn't make it the be all and end all. And I've definitely, and I think again, loads of musicians run into trouble like that because they make their music the center part of their identity, and every time something doesn't go right, it impacts them on an absolutely core level.
Yes, it's always that thing about musicians, isn't it? It's the most important thing until you need a plumber.
Yeah.
You're going to start touring. It's interesting, we were touched a little bit about social media and things like that. And I'm getting the impression that Instagram is the new live. Some people, that is their live. They play on Instagram. But you're not happy just to do that, are you? You want to actually take part of this production out on the road.
I think everyone takes gets joy out of different things. For me, at the very core, I always just wanted to play in front of people. And I've worked on my understanding of that and realized that what's more important, I think, is using music to facilitate connection between people. I think when I was younger, it was all about I just want to play in front of thousands of people and get loads of gratification. And then I realized that I don't really agree with that mentality. I don't want to devote my life to pursuing that and trying to make it something higher. So I try, purely because of choice, that everything we do with this band builds up to some sort of live event. When we recorded the album, we did a show at the Mash House where we had the entire string section perform with us. And this time around, we're obviously releasing the album. It's been a very long road to get there. And I planned this 3-week tour across the UK and Czech Republic because I want there to, at the end of it, to be human connection. And I didn't say this, but the whole sort of ethos about the band is I named the songs after values that I have found help me stay grounded and balanced and present. One of the singles that we've just released is called Presence. And so at the shows, I carve out time to talk about that. It's hard to do because people want to dance, and I love that they want to dance, but I always try and include a moment in the show where I talk about why I do this, why we do this, and what I think is the real purpose. And so for me, that's why the live element is basically the most important part.
Can we listen to a part of one of your songs right now, and which one would you like the listener to hear?
You can listen to 2 singles from the album. One's called Warrior Path, and the other one's called Presence. You can listen to both of them on pretty much any platform that you use to consume music. And I would just say listen to both. They are designed to go, listen to Warrior Path first, because it's kind of like the one that charges you with energy, and then the Presence is supposed to sort of help you feel grounded in whichever moment you are listening to it.
So they're looking for Mahuki, Mahuki, and they're looking for gratitude. What does the shape of success look for this album? Is it even definable?
Yeah, I think it's really, really hard, but important not to, sort of over-obsess with numerics, So there's a PR campaign, and of course, part of it is getting press recognition and media recognition. So that's part of the success, which we have already seen. We've featured on Jazz FM. We just got announced yesterday that we'll play on BBC Radio 3. There's been some Spotify listings and some Apple Music listings. So we're very excited about that. So that's one part of it. But for me, the success would just look like people attending the live shows, so that we can dance and have fun.
What do you think's going to happen in America? Do you have any plans, or are you just taking it as it comes?
I'm going in very blind. So I just worked as the head of production for the Edinburgh Jazz and Blues Festival, and a great perk of the job is that we get a lot of American visiting artists. So in between sound checks and after shows, I tried to connect with them a little bit and just asked, hey, how does it work over there? You know, it's such a huge country, and I come from a very small country in Europe. But the goal, we talked about the players involved in the music industry. And so the goal would be exactly what it would be here, really, is just to look for management. Because at the moment, I do all the songwriting, all the marketing, all the fundraising, all the organizing, all the accounting, loads of the content making, and the list goes on. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way at the moment, and the demands on musicians just get more and more intense. And to be honest, the thing we don't get to do is make music anymore. So the number one goal for me would be just to build the team, but on an organizational level. So if there was a booking agent, a manager, or ideally both, along with the person who already helps me with marketing, it would be an opportunity to play and honestly just to practice. You know, if anyone who's listening still has the luxury of being able to practice 4 hours a day or 2, use every single moment of it that you have, because that won't always be the case, and those times are absolutely beautiful.
Well, and by the same token, you never know who might be listening to this podcast. So Honza, although it's not perhaps the end of our journey, it's kind of the end of our journey, because I first met you when you were just a raw youth in university, and here you are about to start a new life on the other side of the world. It's been great working with you, learning from you, and also teaching you at times. And I think this sounds really exciting. If anyone deserves success, it's you. And I'm sure if anyone's going to get success, however they define it, it will be you. So thanks so much for taking part in this interview, giving us a real insight into the lives of a working musician, and best of luck for the future going forward.
Thank you for having me.